we're ready to get started here with my presentation. So, we don't want you to come here just to sit there and listen. We want you to actually come here, take away some things that you can actually use, right? So some action here. And so, what is this presentation, right? This 90 days to your first investment property. Who's it for? Well, I mean, if you're brand new, right? If you're a brand new investor, how many are brand new, by the way? Never bought an investment property yet. You're here to learn. Okay, good amount in the room. All right. And then, there's some people out there who also they've been quietly gathering all the intel, right? They've been learning, they've been listening to the podcast, they've been reading the blogs, right? All this stuff, right? Doing the research, right? But for whatever reason, they haven't done it yet. They haven't taken action yet. Some of my clients, and I didn't really introduce myself. I'm also a real estate agent and also a mortgage loan officer now. But some of my own clients, they've come to me and they're like, "Hey, I've been listening to like Bigger Pockets for like 2-3 years, but I haven't done anything," right? And it's because maybe they're scared, or maybe they don't know who they should work with, right? And so, do anybody out there like that? Anybody out there who's been like studying all the info, but they haven't taken action yet? Any hands? All right, couple hands. Yep. Don't be afraid. Yep, we're all here. This is a safe space. So this is also going to apply to anybody who wants to expand to a new market, right? So specifically for people who like, hey, in my home market, the numbers just don't make sense, right? The deals don't pan out, And for a lot of my clients, I mean, that might be California, right? Some of my clients are actually in this room, and Minnesota, believe it or not, the deals don't work out in Minnesota, so they come by in Milwaukee, right? So that's when they reach out to me. So to get started, one of the very first things I always ask people who are interested in getting started in real estate investing is like, hey, what's your strategy? What's your investment strategy that you're trying to do here, right? Because the goal is that, hey, we as professionals, we need to understand what you're trying to accomplish so that we can help you get there, right? If you come to us and you're like, kind of like, you don't know, or you know too much and you haven't decided, right? So some of the very common ones are rentals, right? So the landlord lifestyle, the slow, boring money, right? The so-called passive investment rentals. You have flips, which is kind of like you see on HGTV, right? Flip or flop deals, right? So somewhat, some people think it's sexy, some people think it's big money. And then you have BRRRRs. BRRRRs are kind of in between of a rental and a flip, but not really. And then you have short-term rentals, right? So if you're familiar with Airbnbs, right? Which is completely different world compared to long-term rentals. But these are the more common like investment strategies that are out there. There are probably other ones too, but these are the most common. So you kind of have to realize and pick like, hey, which one are you most comfortable with, right? Which one do you want to do, right? And it's okay if you're deciding between like one or two, but I wouldn't say like try to do all of them, because it's kind of like the thing where if you're the master of all, right, but you know everything, but you're not the master of anything, then it's kind of right. You're not that good, right? So that's the first thing is you have to realize what you want. And then even say, for example, for rentals, right? A lot of people come to me and they're like, hey, I want to get a rental property in Milwaukee. Okay, next question goes, what's your comfort level? What kind of areas are you looking for? Are you looking for cash flow, high cash flow? Or are you looking for minimal cash flow? You're okay with just a little bit of money, but you're okay with appreciation. You're looking for appreciation, right? That's really what you're trying to do, right? So that you hold this property and maybe 5 years, 10 years later, you sell it and you make some money on appreciation. Because the truth is that if you want high cash flow, you can't have both high cash flow and high appreciation, right? It just doesn't exist, right? So you have to realize what's possible in a market as well. And that's kind of where, when you study a market, you start running deals, right? You start to understand what deals will work out in a certain market. Same thing with flips. If you're interested in flipping, right, the question would be, how heavy of a flip are you interested in? You just want to do light cosmetic work? Or are you talking about like, hey, you're gonna go gut the entire thing, demo the whole thing, and rebuild it from brand new from top to bottom, right? So there's lots of different levels within each investment strategy. And that's kind of like where we need to know as professionals, like, hey, what are you actually interested in, right? And of course, your budget, things like that. So that will best allow us to help you to achieve your goals. So does that make sense so far? Yeah? All right, cool. Yeah, so let's go on here. So choosing your market is also a very important, this is extremely important, right? As far as prices goes, as far as returns goes, the strategy, right? We talked about in some markets, a certain type of strategy may not work, right? For example, if you're trying to like get an Airbnb for vacation rentals, maybe you're not going to do that in Milwaukee, right? You're probably going to look at Florida, right? Or some kind of like vacation destination, right? But the most common things, you can apply all these filters to pretty much any market, right? And the number one thing that you should look at is population first, right? Because if there's not enough people in that area, then maybe it's not a good place to invest, right? Or if all the people are leaving, right? If all the people are running out of the city and population is declining, you may not have a renter, right? So definitely you want to check the population trends. And that's as simple as going to Google and just typing in, hey, population of St. Paul, Minnesota. And Google will show you like a 10-year graph, and it'll show you like, hey, how the population's been trending. And nowadays, I mean, we're so lucky that we have AI. AI is amazing. You can do all this in AI. You can set it up, and probably it can run all this for you. You just tell it, hey, I want to know the population, the job market, the price points, and the landlord laws, right? And it will automatically, you put in a city, and it'll gather all the information for you. So it's amazing. You can do all that, right? And so, of course, job market in certain cities, of course, you want to know who are the major employers, right? If it's a one horse town, and that one company shuts down, right? Well, how are these people going to pay you money, right? So you definitely should avoid those, that type of market. Same thing with price point. You want to analyze, hey, what is the average cost to buy a home here? Compare it to the average cost of rent, right? If it's cheaper to rent than it is to buy, so it's a rent-heavy market, then that's probably good for you, right? If you're trying to do a rental. So those are the things you want to look at. And then, of course, one of the most important things is landlord laws, right? Regulations, right? And you want to ideally pick a city and a state that is pro landlord, right? So I know here in the Twin Cities, is it St. Paul or Minnesota? One of those that has rent control and all that, and one doesn't, right? So you might want to be careful, right, of where you choose to invest, right? Same thing with Airbnb, right? If you're trying to do Airbnb, do not buy a property without first looking up if the city allows short-term rentals, right? And you can simply just do a Google search, city name, short-term rental regulations, right? Because the worst thing you can do is buy a place and then find out you can't do what you're trying to do, right? So, any questions about any of this so far? All right, so next step. Once you got your market picked out, right, you want to build your boots on the ground team, right? I think we're talking to some of the attendees here about boots on the ground, investing out of state, because the truth is you can't do it all alone, right? And you're not supposed to, right? So you got to assemble your team, and one of the most important pieces is your local realtor, right? This is the person who's going to be running around looking at the properties for you, finding you the deals, sending you the deals, as well as connecting you to possibly every single one of these other professionals. And this is what I do for my clients, right? So a lot of people reach out to me. I promote myself as the local realtor helping investors, right? And then, of course, the natural progression is, hey, how do you plan to buy this place, right? Do you have a loan officer? Or would you like one, right? If you already have one. And so I connect them to local loan officers that I use, that are easy to work with, right? That are that understand investing, right? And then sometimes, depending on the strategy, I mean, you might need hard money, right? So I connect my investors to hard money lenders as well, and they get that relationship built up if they need to go that route, right? And then the next thing is general contractors, because you will probably need to do some kind of rehab at some point, right? So having a couple general contractors and relationships with them, I have a few of those as well, and I have some that are different price points, right? So you have some high end for the clients that want to do high end stuff. I have some that are kind of like middle of the road, and then I have some cheap ones, right? And then of course, handymans are always convenient as well. Those are just for the quick fixes, right? That, hey, I need somebody to get in here and fix the toilet, right? So simple stuff, you gotta build that up. So next slide here, let's talk about how do you hire a local realtor, right? Because the truth is, not all agents are investor friendly, right? And most agents out there are not. So, here's how you go about finding the right one, right? So when you talk to agents, you want to interview them, right? You want to ask them, hey, do you own any investment properties, right? And it's not a negative if they don't own any, not right away, right? But it's always a plus if they do, right? So ask them up front if they do, and what kind of investment strategies they've done. What do they own? Do they own Airbnbs? Do they own long-term rentals? Do they own commercial properties, right? What do they invest in, right? Are they flippers, right? So it's good questions to ask. And then ask them how many investor deals have they closed, right? Or what you're asking is like, hey, what is the majority of your business that is investors, right? So this kind of gives you a gauge on how much business are they actually doing with investors, right? A lot of, sometimes when people ask a realtor, hey, how long have you been in the business? Or what's your experience? They'll just give you years, right? Like, hey, 10 years. But really what you want to know is, hey, how many deals have you actually closed? Because you can have your license for 10 years, but you can do 0 to 1 deal, right? So these are very important questions to ask. And then also, you want to pick the brains, right? You want to ask them, hey, what kind of deal, what are good deals? What do they look like in your area? What's the net cash flow for you that you're seeing out there, right? Or what's possible, right? Because you don't want to, again, just assume and you're trying to get something that's not possible, right? And that's when you have to kind of like learn from the local agents and, hey, here's the monthly net cash flow that's possible, right? If you're trying to ask for $1,000 net cash flow a month, they're like, what? What are you talking about, right? That's way too high, right? The best they might see is like $50 a month, right? So you kind of have to know, and that'll kind of help you guide you with your market selection as well. And then of course you want to talk cap rates. If you're not familiar with cap rates, ask us about that later. ARV numbers, right? Especially if you're a flipper and you want to understand the values of certain neighborhoods, right? And they should be able to tell you, I mean, they're not going to know these exact numbers, but they should at least be able to roughly tell you, hey, based on what you're telling me, like these are neighborhoods I would take you to, or I would suggest you look at, and the prices here are probably anywhere from 100 to 120, and you can resell it for like 200, right? And if those rough numbers work for you, then they work. But if that agent's like doesn't know, then maybe you probably shouldn't be working with that person, right? So especially if they're always in the market, they're always looking, they're always working with investors, these numbers, these rough numbers, they should at least have off the top of their head. And then of course, ask them for their network, right? You want to ask them for connections, ask them for, hey, do you have a contractor, right, that I can talk to, or a couple contractors? Do you have loan officers, right, property managers, things like that, right? You want to be connected, you want to build your team. And when they give you these names, when you interview them, you also want to ask them the same thing, like, hey, do you have these other people as well? And once you start hearing the same names over and over, you're like, okay, I think these people, if they start saying like the same companies over and over, that's probably a good sign, right? So that will save you a lot of headache, right? And hiring the wrong people, because when you hire the wrong people, you learn the hard way, right? And the last thing is, are they hungry or are they just available, right? Meaning that, are they really going to hustle for you to work hard to find you deals, or are they just going to set you up with like an internet search and kind of just walk away, right? So that's something that's very important too, is customer service, right? How are they serving their clients, right? Are they actually sending you deals, handpicking you deals, and sending them to you, right? Sometimes majority of my clients, I do set them up on those email drips, right? And if you've worked with a realtor at all, you see they send you these email drips that as soon as like a property that fits your criteria hits, you're gonna see the email. But the truth is, a lot of investors don't even look at those emails. Because over time, you're gonna get thousands of those emails. Every day there's a new property that comes in. Majority of my investors never look at them, right? And honestly, a lot of investors, one day they want to buy something, one day they don't, right? So sometimes they check out, right? And so for me, if you're really like in the business, you're trying to get business, right? As an agent, you're trying to help people who are serious about building wealth. You have to be looking for deals, right? Every day, every morning, I'm in there looking for deals. Like, hey, I got this investor, he wants to buy this. Oh, hey, that one looks good for this investor, and I send it to them. I text it to them, I email it to them. And majority of 90% of those investors, they don't ever reply, right? Because they're not in the mode to buy, right? And they're not in buying mode, right? It could be they're tapped out, capital's tapped out, whatever. But the thing is, when people are ready to go, they're ready to go, and they'll respond, right? So as an agent, if you're an agent in the room, you got to build your investor list, right? And you got to keep working and keep sending out the deals. All right, so once you have your realtor, right, of course, on the realtor side, my next question is always, hey, how do you plan to buy your property, right? Do you have the money right now? Are you buying cash? Cash is always good, right? Cash is king, right? Because no lenders required, no appraisals needed, right? And it's the strongest, most competitive thing that you can offer as a buyer, right? So there's very little hesitation from a seller to not take a cash offer, except if, the only thing is not high enough, right? Of course, if people are like, yeah, I have cash, well, then of course, be like, hey, we need to see proof of funds. So you need to have your proof of funds ready, and that would be like a bank statement, right? A recent bank statement, something like that, showing that you actually do have the cash available. So you have to prepare and have that ready. The most common, if you don't have cash, right, is go get a loan, right? And so now these are the two common types of loan products out there that most investors go down the route. And it kind of just depends on how good of a credit you have, how bankable you are, right? So if you have a normal W-2, if your credit scores are good, the lowest rate that you can get is probably if you go conventional loan, right? So if you go get a conventional loan from either a bank or a broker, it's anywhere from 5 to 25% down. Depends if you're going to live in there, right? So if you're going to do a house hack, of course it's like 3.5% with the FHA loan or 5% down. But if you're not living in there, then the down payment does get a little bit higher, anywhere from 15% to 25% down if you're not occupying the property, right? Now, you can't use conventional loans for a flip because if the property, to be a good flip, it has to be pretty terrible condition, right? And if it's terrible condition, the bank's not going to give you a loan on it because it's terrible condition. Too risky, right? So if you are flipping, you are going to need a hard money loan, which is not up here, but that'd be a little bit different. Hard money, real quick, is just short term. 6 months is most common. 1 year is the longest usually. Very high interest rate though, like about 15, anywhere from 12 to 15%. But the thing is that it's short term, right? And so you have to have a game plan. You have to be ready to go. You have to finish your flip pretty much and list it, in 3 to 4 months, and then have it sold in 6, right? Otherwise, there's massive penalties coming after you. So there's a big clock ticking on that. And if you have the game plan, you have the general contractor all lined up, you have everything ready to go, then shouldn't be an issue, right? But if you're doing like rental properties, then yeah, conventional investor loan is probably the way that you're probably going to go, especially if it's your first one or your first couple ones. Now you do max out on 10 conventional loans on your personal name, okay? So if you're out there and you're, you got 10 or you got 9, yeah, you're getting pretty close to being limited, right? And once you do get to that limit, you can't get any more conventional loans. Then you would have to go non-QM or DSCR loan, right? So that's this one here. And so non-QM is a little bit more of a special investor product that not all lenders offer. So brokers like me and Johnny, we offer this. Some direct retail lenders do offer it as well. But the nice thing about the biggest difference between these two is that they don't care about your personal income. They don't care about your tax returns. They're going to qualify you based on the ability of the property to make income to cover the mortgage. So that's why it's called debt service coverage ratio. And usually there's a factor in this. Usually it's 1, so debt service coverage ratio 1, meaning that the rent has to at least cover the monthly mortgage, right? Other things are, it's about 20% down, most common. And then also you need to have at least a 640 or better FICO, so your credit score has to be 640 or better. And it's also pretty good for self-employed people, because again, they don't care about your taxes and all that stuff. So yeah, this is the route to go if you want the least amount of paperwork, right? And then also the interest rate, as far as interest rates go between these two, conventional investment loan, like if you see a lot of realtors or loan officers posting what's the rate today, conventional investment loan, that rate is going to be about 0.5%, 1% higher than what you see advertised for a normal home buyer. So think plus 1% on top of that, right? So if today is 6.5, you're probably going to get like a 7.5, right, for that. Non-QM, it's probably going to be another 0.5% higher to probably 1% higher than this one. But sometimes there are ways that we can get your interest rate lower, right? And that would involve if you're willing to take on something called a prepayment penalty, right? Meaning that if you sell your property within 3 years, 5 years of ownership, it depends, you can pick. If you sell it sooner, potentially you're going to get hit with a fee. But in return for taking that risk of having that fee, we can get your rate lower. And sometimes we can even get your rate lower than this, right? So I have just for example, I have a file I'm working on right now. My investor, he's buying a rental property. He wants to hold it for 5 years. So he has a 5-year prepayment penalty, right? And so I'm able to get him right now a 6.75% interest rate, which is really good. It's probably beats this. It's almost as close to a regular buyer. So because he wants to take on that 5-year risk, right? He's saying, I'm not going to sell this place. I'm not going to refinance it anytime until after 5 years, right? So that's the risk he's taking. But in return, he's getting that much lower rate. All right. So now that we know how to fund the deal, right? How do you find a good loan officer? And it's kind of the same thing. Not all loan officers speak investor language, right? And a lot of loan officers out there, they are quite literally order takers or yes man. Whatever you tell them, they're like, yeah, I can do that for you, right? They love to tell you what you want to hear because they want your business. They don't care if they can actually do it. You ask, hey, can you give me the lowest rate? Like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I got the lowest rates, right? So you have to be very careful, right? And you have to vet it carefully. So, of course, same question, very similar questions. Hey, do you invest in real estate yourself, right? And of course, if they do, that means they actually know what they're talking about, right? And then also investor loan products, right? If they work for a bank or a credit union, they likely have no idea what a DSCR loan is or what hard money is or anything else that's creative, that's more creative loan, right? Bank statement loan only, right? we have all these other solutions that most regular banks and credit unions don't touch, right? And then, of course, an important question is, hey, how quick can you close, right? Because as a buyer, you want to, when you're putting out offers, you want to be very aggressive, right? You want to be able to close your deal as soon as possible. So the quicker that you can close, the better. And then also you want to ask potentially, hey, do you have more than one lender that you can shop, right? So this question is mostly for brokers. If you're going to a bank or credit union, that's their own money. That's their own in-house money. They don't have any other that they can shop, really. But if you go to a broker, I have with my brokerage at Nexa, we have over 270 lenders that we can shop your loan to, right? And then lastly, will they actually educate you, right? Rather than just give you a quote. I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier with Mark. But basically, yeah, we're here to educate our clients, right? We're not here to just give you a product and be done with it, right? We're here to help you figure out what all your solutions are, what all your options are, help you make the best decision for yourself, right? And if that means that you don't use us and you go use one of our competitors because we educated you and pushed you that way, and that works better for you, that works better for you, right? That's fine that you didn't use us this time, but maybe there's next time, right? And so that's really what you're trying to look for, is a loan officer that not only just wants to close your deal, but they want to help you to do the next one and the next one. And so they want to build that relationship with you, right? They want to educate you, they want to help you maximize your wealth, right? So, all right, so we're coming to the end, I think here. What are we doing on time? Well, plenty of time. Okay, so management, right? So a lot of the times as investors, new investors especially, climbing that first mountain, right? You're like, just getting that deal, finding the deal, you get excited, getting the deal on a contract, you get excited, and then you go to closing, and then you're like, you think you're done, right? You think you're done. You found the deal, you got everything done, but quite honestly, any experienced investor will tell you that management will make or break your deal, right? If you are bad at managing your property, and a lot of us don't know until we do it, right? And we go through it. This is where you make the money, right? And so specifically, this example is talking about rentals. Could apply to short-term rentals as well if you want to manage those. But of course, so here's the difference between self-managed and property management, right? So a lot of investors out there, they'll think, oh, hey, I'm just going to self-manage because it's going to save me 8 to 12% in fees, right? So they're going to try and take that on, which is, hey, congratulations, that's brave of you. Go ahead. But now you don't realize that, hey, everything's on you. You're in complete control of that property, right? And your tenant and all that, right? So, yeah, it is a great learning experience, right? And I do recommend that you probably try it at least yourself, and so now you know what your property manager is doing for you. But the negatives, the cons, you're on call, right? And quite honestly, in my experience of investing over, 15 years, I've only had calls to go fix stuff probably once or twice a year, right? And a lot of the times to reduce that, you have to do a really good job at screening your tenants, right? At putting the right tenant in to begin with. If you have a showing, I've had this happen before. People come to the showing and they're like, that single sink, I don't like that. Can you put a double sink in? Dude, this is my house. This isn't you. Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. That shower, I don't like that shower. Can you put in a fancy rain shower? No. Yeah, you gotta dang, these are high maintenance people. No, it ain't working out, right? So yeah, you have to be very careful, okay? And a lot of the thing is emotions, right? Especially if you're a nice guy, right? Or a nice girl. Right? You like to avoid conflict, right? And of course, as a landlord, you have rules, right? You have these rules and you have these contracts that people sign, but then when they break it, are you going to enforce it? Right? So, you have to ask yourself, be honest with yourself. You know, are you going to be a good cop or bad cop? Right? And when you let people slide, and they take that 1 inch, and you know, all of a sudden it becomes a yard and a mile. Right? So yeah, you have to be very hands-on with your properties. Okay. I learned that the hard way myself, of course. And same thing with like, you know, sob stories. Everybody's got sob stories, right? The single mom who's been homeless, right? And you feel bad and you like want to give them a house, but then later it turns into a nightmare. So yeah, be very careful, right? And sometimes if you don't want to take that responsibility, that's where you hand it off to a property manager. You're like, hey, go deal with that, right? Because now they become the bad guy. You sit there, you could be the good guy. And yeah, it's harder to scale as well, right? Unless you start building your own in-house property management company, right? You hire your own employees, which might be the way to go for some people. Now let's talk about property manager. Like, what does that look like if you hire, right? So this is mostly passive. Don't assume that the property manager is doing everything for you. They do not do everything, okay? One of the most important questions is ask them what they don't do for you, right? So sometimes evictions. Sometimes they don't do evictions for you, right? That's a big piece, especially if the tenant goes bad and you have to be the one to kick them out. Yeah, so make sure that you understand what they do and what they don't do, okay? And then it does help you scale, right? It does make it easier for you because now you have less time on call, right? And professional tenant screening. That's a really good piece because you do rely on your property manager to put in good people. If you hire a bad property, and not all property managers are good, by the way, they may just put in a body, okay? But that might be a bad tenant, right? And then it's going to cost money to get rid of that tenant and put a new one in, right? So you be very careful, ask good questions. But some property managers I've seen out there, they offer a eviction guarantee. So like, hey, if we have to evict them in less than 6 months, you're going to get your fees back, right? So they're putting themselves out there that, hey, we back the tenants we put in your place, right? We're not just putting anybody. So be very careful on who you hire for property management. And then of course, they charge anywhere from 8 to 12% of your monthly rent. Sometimes you can find people that charge per unit, like anything from $50 to $100 a month per unit. And then also you want to check that, hey, they only charge this when there's actually somebody in the place, right? When it's vacant, they're supposed to be helping you find somebody. They better not be collecting, right? There's nothing to collect. So, and then of course, one of the biggest things is you have less control, okay? So this is very important. If you are a control freak and you don't like how people do things, you probably will not have a good time with a property manager because you are going to butt heads with how they do stuff. This is their company. They have certain rules that they follow, certain standards that they've built in their company. If you don't like the way they operate, you are probably going to have to go back to self-manage or hire a different property manager because you can't walk into another person's business and tell them how to do it, right? They're going to tell you, go away. They're going to fire you, right? So, yeah, that's one of the things that you have to understand for yourself is like, hey, how much of a control freak are you, right? And if you are too much, then like I said earlier, you should probably build your own property management company, right? At the end of the day, right? It depends on how big you want to go. There are some big time investors that are very successful because they built their own internal property management company. They hire people, right? And they trust them to take care of all their places, right? They have a whole crew, right? So, but at the same time, yeah, this is the very last one. A bad property management company can definitely kill your investment as well. They're sucking out 8 to 12% of your rent, but now if they're nickel and diming you every month, you see all these like BS, like, hell yeah, we replaced the light, we replaced the toilet. Like, damn, how many lights, how many toilets need to be replaced in this house, right? Start asking questions, start looking at your stuff, right? It's not just set it and forget it, okay? So, does that make sense? All right, so here is your 90-day action plan, right? So days 1 through 30, you are going to pick your strategy that you are comfortable with, research your target market, right? And then define your buy box, your criteria, right? And days 31 to 60, once you understand what you're going to do now you're going to have to go and reach out to people, interview realtors, interview loan officers, property management, contractors, things like that, right? You want to set up your funds so that you know how you're going to buy this property, right? You want to have an idea of how you plan to close, right? And at the same time, you want to start analyzing the deals in those areas. So that realtor sending you the deals, you should be looking at them right away, within 24 hours, I would say. 24 hours, look at them, right? That's one of the pet peeves, by the way, of being a realtor and sending out deals to people who are so-called ready to buy, but they never respond, right? So they're not really ready to buy. Also, sometimes realtors will test you. So realtors will send you shitty deals to look at because they think you're wasting their time. And they're testing you because if you think it's bad, then you should tell them, hey, that deal doesn't work for me. I'm looking for this and this and that. And now they know that you're actually paying attention and they can send you the better deals, right? So sometimes realtors do that to you. And then days 61 to 90, you want to make your offers. You want to try and get under contract, right, and close. And then once you have that closing, whether you're flipping or you're going to hold as a rental, have your property manager take over, have your contractor get in there, start swinging hammers and getting things done, right? So that is pretty much it. This is just a similar type of slide here. Any questions that you guys have? See people taking pictures. We will be sending out the slides too, so you guys don't need to take pictures. You don't want to. We'll send them out to you guys after the event.
I want to turn on the second mic for questions. So, give me a second while I set it up real quick.
Question.
Yeah.
So if we, in the future, want to do one of these, could we reach out to you guys and do like a one-on-one consultation?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Figure out stuff out? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Reach out to us. I mean, you know us, but if you have other people you don't want to work with us, that's fine with us. You won't hurt our feelings.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions?
Testing.
Oh, you're gonna be the mic runner?
Yeah, I'll be the mic runner. So, did you guys get that? Did you guys everybody hear that last question? Right?
Oh, by the way,
Back.
here's my contact information if you want to scan it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times I think it's the hesitation that a lot of people have out there, and I have it too myself, is analysis paralysis, right? You are overthinking so much, especially when you see a good deal and you're like, holy crap, this actually works out. Should I offer on it or should I not? Should I sign that? Right? Should I sign it? And I think sometimes we have too much fear. But if you go through the process of underwriting the deal, you talk to your realtor, they agree with you. You talk to your loan officer, they agree with you, and they say it's good. Sometimes you just got to go on based on faith, right? You got to just try it and figure it out, and just do it. Because at the end of the day, you have to. Also, the other question you have to ask is, what does it look like if I don't do this deal, right? And I've had this conversation with my clients before, like great deals, and he's ready to close, and he's like kind of scared, like, man, I don't know if I should go closing. It's like, bro, you better go to closing. but I have to talk him down. I'm like, hey, you know what? You said this is what you want to do. You said you've wanted to be investing for years. You've seen other deals. What happened to that? How did those deals look like? He's like, oh yeah, those other deals that I skipped out on. Yeah, they gained $100,000 in appreciation. And I was like, yeah, exactly. So, what are you waiting for? Like, you want to repeat that again and watch from the sidelines again? He's like, oh, good point. No, okay, let me sign this paper. Right? Because he's lived through it. He's experienced that loss of opportunity, right? And he's like, all right, you're right. Let's do this. So, yeah. Any other questions? Anybody want to make Johnny run? Peter, of course.
So from the investment strategies, which one is the one that you would recommend to a brand new investor for the easier and safest strategy?
Yeah. So again, a lot of that is it depends, right? Quite honestly, on your personal situation, right? Are you single? Do you have kids? Do you have a wife? Right? If you have a lot of people depending on you, you may not want to take too much risk, right? If you're single and you haven't bought a house yet, go house hack. That's the easiest way, right? Go house hack, meaning that you buy your own first property, right? Whether it's a duplex or even a single family, if that's all you can afford, and you rent out each room or you rent out the other side, right? And now your tenant's paying your mortgage, right? At least they should be making up at least half, I would say, to be considered a good deal, half of your mortgage. And then the thing is that when you move out a year later, because you only need to stay in your place for a year, now the other tenant comes in, right? And now you're making money, right? But then of course you have to like, oh, okay, let me go house hack again, buy another place, so you can repeat again, right? So that's the approach that I recommend for a lot of young folks out there in the room. If you have a wife and kids, they may not like they like their privacy. They're not gonna be like, no, I'm not downsizing. Are you crazy? I'm not gonna go move in a duplex, right? They might leave you. So if that's you, then you might want to try maybe a burr. I don't know. It depends, right? Depends. Like burrs, you usually buy a kind of rundown property, right? And you're doing a lot of work to fix it up, and then you want to potentially rent it out, or you can like refinance or until you can refinance, right? Get your money back, and you can do it again, right? So you could do that, but if you have a family, probably the best strategy is a live and flip, right? So live and flip. Every 2 years, you stay in a property, right? And there's a lot of people who do this, people who love moving. You buy a property that's kind of beat up, but it has to be in a nice area because that's the purpose, right? You want that resale value, that appreciation. So now you're going to buy it, you're going to like fix things up, and it has to be in a desirable area. You're trying to buy the ugliest house on the nicest block that you can afford, right? And so you live in it for 2 years, you fix it up, and after 2 years, when you sell it, there's no capital gains because that's the IRS code, right? As long as you don't exceed like 1 million. I think that's the current tax code that says $1 million of profit, which kind of hard to exceed in our market here, unless you did a great deal where you bought it for like $1 or something like that, right? So yeah, live and house hack, or live and flip, sorry, house hack. Probably those would probably be the safest route to go. And then if you don't want to do that, just go buy an investment property if you have money. So like a rental. You could also try, if you're adventurous and you don't like the winter, which is a great setup for our next speaker, and you got money, you got some deep pockets, you got rich people problems, you might want to buy a second home in a nicer location that you actually want to go visit, right? So you're done with buying houses in the hood. You're not trying to go take care of those houses. You want to go somewhere nice, right? Then you might want to buy a second home, right? And that vacation home, whatever, where you're there for 2 weeks of the year, whatever, to enjoy, right, with your family. But when you're not there, you're renting it out on Vrbo, on Airbnb. Those guests are helping to pay your house, right? So I'm taking away from the next speaker here, but I'll stop at that. All right, so any other questions? That's a good question, by the way. Johnny, any questions that you have, that you've seen, that people should know about?
Yeah, so I do have a couple of questions for you. The first one would be, have you ever incurred significant challenging, like, okay, so you're in the business, and then you also have clients that are in the business of investing in real estate. Have you experienced where a client came to you and it wasn't profitable and they had to get out, and how massive of a loss was it for them to do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time, quite honestly, right? And as investors or people who want to invest, you have to understand that investing doesn't mean you're going to make money, right? Investing means you're willing to risk loss, right? And that's quite the truth. And even though you lose, if you learn, it's not really a loss, right? Money you can always make back as long as it's not, you're not losing millions or probably more. But Depends. I mean, you have the ability to make millions, and it doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, there's investors out there that I've worked with where they buy properties, and like we were talking about, property management makes or breaks deals. I had investors who bought in Milwaukee, kind of, in the more inner city area that you can picture, right? We're realtors, we can't say too much about neighborhoods, but you can picture in your head. And high cash flow, right? And they had a property manager. They weren't property managing themselves, but they hired a bad property manager. And they weren't the best. They weren't taking care of the places. They weren't keeping up with the tenants, right? And so it just became a massive headache for them over 2 years, right? 3 years that they owned it. And they're like, hey, Laura, we need to get out. Can you help us sell this, right? And I went to tour the property. I said, hey, how does it look from when you first bought it? And they were in the process of having their property manager fix it up, right? And it was terrible. Their property manager sucked. Like the work they did was so bad. I was like, hey, just stop. Like they were painting the floors and the walls and the ceiling, and the overspray was so bad. They did new flooring, and then they decided to paint. All the paint dripped on the new flooring. I'm like, guys, have you guys been here to look at the place and what your contractor's doing? Like, you know, and it was terrible. I was just like, hey, just stop. We'll just try and sell it as is. And luckily, I was able to sell it to them I got them out of the deal actually for basically the same price that they bought it. Of course, they lost money on the rehab and all that stuff, but I found an investor that bought it cash, and they didn't have to deal with inspection. They had to repair anything. So they got out of it pretty easily. But again, this is a lower price point, so under 100K. But it does happen, and like we said, the game plan, guys. Property management, following the game plan, that really does help to make you successful. So, any other questions? Still got like 15 minutes. Any other experienced investors out there want to share some stories? So I think you asked me about, have I had to do any kind of like rough experiences as an investor? I mean, I had to evict. It's not a question of if you have to evict. It's like, when do you have to evict, right? And so that's another thing. You have to have reach out to some lawyers, and I don't recommend doing evictions yourself. I learned that the hard way. I tried to serve my own papers, and it didn't work out. When it showed up to court, and the judge was like, no, this is trash. You didn't do it right. Right? Some Sam shaking his head out there. So save yourself the headache at the time. Just hire a professional who does it every day. So I found a lawyer. I got a recommendation from somebody else that said, hey, this lawyer, all he does is evictions. He sits in court every single day. That's all he does. So I was like, all right, and how much does he charge? Oh, $300. Shit, why didn't nobody tell me that earlier? Here you go. I don't have to take off PTO. I don't have to go to court. He's going to do everything. He's going to go talk to the court. And sure enough, I hire him. Like, instead of wasting a month trying to evict, because I had a professional tenant, by the way. She was an expert. An expert at working the legal system. And she, like I said, the sob story, right?